So, God's questions.
What we were working on last week, um, been really insightful for moving the energy. But I feel like when I was working on that practice, I was connecting with the energy in a different way than when we were previously flowing through God's. And I guess had difficulty combining the two.
Can you describe that a little more fully? What?
Yeah, so you know, um, doing the postures with a smaller movement and really focusing on the energy coming from the feet up to the diaphragm and the dantian, um, combining that with some of the energetic principles that we were doing in each posture with kind of like the goal of the posture. So like posture two, trying to get the energy out to the etheric body and back in, or up and down the side channels and the central channels in the later postures. I couldn't seem to connect to both of those at the same time.
Mm,
uh, but I could kind of switch back and forth if I let go of one and did the other. So should you be doing both, or are they just different ways to explore and move the energy?
you're always doing both and many others as well. Uh,
Hmm.
just to be
Of
clear.
course.
Um,
Okay.
and you point to absolutely a stage of development. Um, it's very hard at, probably at this point to feel both of those simultaneously. And when you get to 5 and 6, you're adding even another circuit. So we have feeling from the dantian to the extremities and back to the dantian, which is a primary one. At the same time that you're doing that, you are having from the feet to the etheric body and back through your feet to the etheric body. And at the same time, you are having the central channel and the side channels, and they going in both directions. So, as with all of the elements, you have to practice each one until it is so a part of what you're doing that you don't no longer have to think about it consciously
Mm.
before you can then begin to consciously think about the next one. And when you get that one to the point where you no longer have to think about doing it, the two will combine. Um, and
Mm.
it so it again is a matter of practice and time. Um, and different postures and different moments of doing different postures requires different intention and awareness. So
Mm.
it kind of depends what's going on eventually, at least about what's going on in your body and your life each day, each moment when you're doing it.
Mm.
Mm.
So it's not, this is not easy. this is this is difficult, and you described that quite well, Adam. I think that's quite appropriate that that's sort of where you are at the moment.
Mm.
I don't know if
Okay.
that helps you at all, but
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I think it helps clarify kind of, setting intention for practice, whether, to focus on one or the other, or focus on trying to feel whatever degree I can do both at the same time,
Yeah. And
and just move through that phase of practice.
and not being concerned about the fact that at the moment you can't do both
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
simultaneously.
Mhm.
That's very understandable. I mean, I've been there, done that, believe me. Absolutely. Joanne, did you start to say something?
Yeah, I did. I thought it took me a little while, a few days actually of practice, to appreciate doing this without my arms. Because it's frustrating. I find it frustrating. But I appreciated it just in terms of, I think it is true that we so focus on our arms and our upper body, that kind of really restricting that movement. Although I found at times I needed to kind of maybe do it once, just, for the first time, each time I went into each one, just to kind of like kick start myself, but then really trying to not use my arms really did give me that ability to focus on from my feet to my diaphragm.
Good.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting, challenging, but in the long run, I think rewarding process.
Yeah. And it is difficult. I mean, whenever you take away a part of a movement that you've been doing frequently, and try to focus on an internal, it's difficult because you discover that you've been depending on the movement.
Right, and that the legs become an afterthought.
Yeah.
Too often, I think.
Mm.
Bill?
Yeah, I did play with it some, and then I did the regular practice the last couple of days. And what I noticed was, I think the overall coordination improved quite a bit.
Ah,
Having everything going together with the diaphragm, the breathing, the twisting the fascia and extending out and in was coming a lot closer to sort of getting to the extreme, getting to the right place all at the same time. I'm not saying it was fully successful, but it was a lot closer than it has been. I found the reversing my breathing didn't happen, which is something that I never quite figured out when it happened through a couple of times. So I think doing the small thing, I somehow switched, and I want to say it's the breath, but the diaphragm and the internal part sort of being the coordinator rather than sort of trying to pat your tummy and rub your belly at the same time, rub your whatever that is. But a kind of mechanical coordination versus an energetic coordination, perhaps.
Good. Great. They've all said what you felt, Bill?
Combinations of it, yes. I pretty much stuck with the exercise as we did it in class last week. The diaphragm to the feet and back. And as Joanne indicated, that, it's frustrating, especially for me, who overuse my hands to begin with. Not to be able to employ them in any particular way, but I did understand that this was a focus on one thing, and once that's in place, it can join the other things. So not to worry about the other things for the time being.
Good. Okay. Well, let's build on that. So, going to look this week, building on the principle of the 6 external combinations, the opening and closing of the elbows and knees, which must be in exact coordination. They both open together and they both close together. But there are even other times in God's playing in the clouds when they open and close in opposition. Not opposition, but oppositely. Where one opens and the other closes. But they are moving at the exact same ratio of speed. So when one has done something 50%, the other one has done 50% as well. Now at this stage, at least for a while, you could make the center of your metronome for your movement, your qua or your spine or your dantian. But for now we're going to make the opening and closing of the qua be the center, the leader of the band. The reason for this is that the way in which they will affect your spine and your legs, they become the transference points. So what's happening in your upper body will go down to your feet, and what's happening in your feet will go to your upper body. It's a little bit easier way to get to how to coordinate any sort of openings and closings of the elbows, knees, and qua in God's. So, I'd like you to stand for this first practice. And just shake or jiggle your arms a bit until you feel that your elbow is really connected to your spine. And then hold it at that position. It's kind of to me, it's similar to what happens when we step out to begin. And the very first thing that happens during that step with the arms is that the elbows find that extension to connection with the spine. And you want to hold that onto that connection. It's like stretching a rubber band that you don't want to let snap back. Now the sense of opening the elbow really just slightly. And so actually you can bring one arm up, holding on to that connection between the elbow and the spine. And then just let that elbow open a little. And it's a very small movement. Not something I can really demonstrate because I don't think you'd be able to see it if I did. But you want to let the elbow open and then holding that connection, just begin to open and close the elbow. So keeping the elbow in that position. So there are two things that you want to notice. presuming your spine is connected, as you open and close the elbow, you're not going to feel some sort of a heavy hydraulic pressure in your elbow. It's just that the nature of how the fluids will move. But if you open your elbow just very slightly at first and then you go back and forth, you'll start feeling a really concrete hydraulic movement inside your elbows. What is coming in is really flooding the fluids inside your elbow and getting them to move around. And the fluids are going to carry the chi. And then go to the other arm. And again, first get your elbow out, connect it to the spine. And then just open up your elbow joint a tiny bit. It doesn't need to be much. And then once you feel that it's opened, you stretch and bend your arms, and it becomes like a water pump. And that is what actually pumps the fluid. If you don't do that, but just move the elbow back and forth, you'll get a lot of muscular movement, and you will get whatever would naturally move through your elbow, but not an increased amount. Okay, so relax. Could you get a sense of that, or is anyone having a difficulty with it?
Sense of that.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, I could get a sense of it.
Yeah, it worked. It happens.
Good. Bill Nagel?
Yes, not consistent, but there, when I remembered to twist, that helped.
Okay, it actually doesn't have to twist to do it. If you actually can get not only the connection to the spine, but then opening the elbow before you begin the opening and closing movements, then you're not required to twist in order to get the awareness.
Okay.
So that, just to work on that. Now, if we look at the knees next, and we're going to do this sitting down, the first point is the elbow and knee are a package deal. They need to be moving in coordination with each other. The first thing to always keep in mind is your knee is a weight transference joint. It is not a weight-bearing joint. Its ligaments are mostly holding your knee together in some fashion. The bones that are in the knee are actually aren't that big or big enough to carry the weight, but the ligaments are. And the next thing is that you want weight to transfer through your knee. You want your weight to transfer from your thigh down your calves and down to your feet. And where is the place inside your knee that you want the weight to transfer through? And it's the back of the knee, as I think you all know. So like the elbow, the first thing is you have to have your hip stable. And seated, that's relatively easy to do. And then you want to bend your knee a little, and you're talking about bending it forward slightly, just a little, opening it up. And then make the knee bend and straighten. So your foot, you're actually going to lift your foot off the ground a little. And since you're doing this sitting down, you should be able to feel a fluid pressure building up in the back of your knee. So you start by opening up the knee just like we did the elbow. And then you make the foot go back and forth, bending and stretching the knee. And you should feel the pressure in the back of the knee, not in the front of the knee. The front of the knee is where you do not want to feel any weight, because that means that the front of your knee is bearing the weight. And the structure of the knee is actually flimsy in terms of bearing weight. So if you've done just one side, try the other one. Let the knee just extend forward, opening a little bit, and then bend and extend. And see if you can get a sense of that movement in the back of the knee and through the leg. So, some sense of that. A little harder than the elbow.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, not so much. I can feel ligaments and tendons or whatever those things are moving, but I'm not feeling a lot of sort of energy or, soft flow.
Or sense of fluid movement.
No. Yeah, but I have one leg that's always sort of numb. It's from a condition that I've lived with for my life. And,
That's the one we want to work on.
Right.
yeah, if we could fix that, that would be something.
So we want to try to understand how to get the elbow and knee to move easily in coordination. So this one you have to do standing up.
Okay.
So as you come into your basic position, the first thing you want to do is to have your pelvis feel very stable. And part of that now, remember, is going to be having the sacrum pointing straight down to the earth. So there is, of course, that slight tuck of the pelvis. And you're also not, remember, at this point, ideally standing fully erect. You're in your basic level position. And then just bring both arms out in front. And then see if you can get a sense of letting the elbow and the knee both open slightly, moving forward. Let it, both of them open up those joints. Remember, it's only a little bit, not much. This opens up the joints for the inside, and you have to feel this because there's no way that I can show it to you. The movement is too small. And then the next thing is you have to get the elbow and the knee to open and close together. Let the elbow and the knee go together, bending and stretching, and just feel that first initial 10 or 20% as they move together until you're clear what it is. So it can be a very small movement to begin with. You want to be clear because if you're fuzzy about this, it's hard to get the next part. So, feeling that you've opened them up, now stretch them out and bring them back. And what I want you to have is that what's happening in the elbows starts happening also in the back of the knees. Back of your knees is going to be like a hollowed out tree. There are no big bones in there. It's all fluid and ligaments. And the reason you're doing this is so that when you close your elbows, you are closing the back of your knees. And when you're opening your elbows, you're opening the back of your knees. Both of them together. Closing together and opening together. Be aware that if you feel pressure in the front of the knee, you don't want that, because that means that the front of your knee is bearing the weight of your body. So you have to make sure that the action is happening in the back of your knee. If you do that, it will reset the natural way in which the knee joints open, and you'll be fine. You won't be grinding on your knee, which is what you don't want to have happening. So, keep opening and closing those joints together. Remembering that step one is you want to get your elbows connected to your spine, so that if you put a little bit, pull a little bit, it will pull the spine. And next you want to make sure that your knees are connected to your elbows, so that when you bend your knees, it's going right to your spine. And now your elbows and knees are connected to your spine. And then you open up the elbow just a little. At the same moment, you do that opening up the back of your knees just a little. And you have to feel this. as you bend your arms back and then forward, you should start feeling some sort of hydraulic pressure building in your elbows. And then feel the same thing in your knees. The hydraulic pressure happens because your pelvis is going down. You're using your pelvis and your elbows to get the pressure in your knees and elbows, and you want to feel the pressure in the back of the knee. As you get better, you will actually begin to feel fluid movement go from your feet through your knee to your spine, and from your spine back through your knee down to your feet. And that's what you're going to be doing with all the ways your arms are moving in God's. So pause and relax. So could you begin to get some sense of the two working together?
Yes.
Good.
Yep.
I think so.
Yeah,
I guess I
and-
should say a sense of working at the same time, maybe not
Mm,
together, if that makes sense.
That does make
Right.
sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it does. Yeah.
So that's the next stage you want to develop then.
Hmm.
Move it to the-
Because
Yeah.
there is that sense that the two not only are happening at the same time in different places, but they're happening together at the same time.
Mhm.
I think the spine movement and energy that goes with that is really coordinates it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So we're focusing on the qua as the leader of the
Mhm.
band, as Bruce puts it, and that does help get that connection through the spine.
Mhm.
Yep. Any question, Mr. Nagel?
No, I would say that I felt movement much more in my legs, up into the abdomen than in my arms and scapula. I was busy trying to stop muscles from interfering. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Part of that is really in the very beginning, finding that, and we've worked on this numbers of times, but finding that connection between the elbow and the spine. We talked first about elbow and scapula, but now we want to really extend that beyond the scapula to the spine. And then
Mhm.
really beginning to feel that sense of opening the joint. And I think one of the things that I just want to remind you is that when we talk about opening a joint, we're not talking about lengthening the joint. Yes, that is also happening, but we're talking about expanding the joint spherically. And when we close, it closes. So that's the sense we're trying to feel in that opening and closing. All the other movements go along with it, the bending and stretching, or bending and extending, is one of the easy ways to make that connection or work on that connection. But they're not the same thing. And ultimately, you can open and close without actually bending or stretching.
Mm.
That's another step down the road, as it were.
Yeah.
Any other questions right at the moment? Okay,
No, I don't think so.
so we're going to look at doing this in movement 2. And again, as you're opening up, you want to try to be aware when you run out of your ability to rise higher, or when you run out of puff. Be very clear about where the opening and closing changeovers are. And if you run out of puff, remember one thing. When your legs are bending, they are bringing the chi from your head to your feet. And when your legs are straightening, they are bringing the chi from your feet up to your head, the crown of your head. So I'd like you to practice movement 2, trying to really be aware of being clear about coordinating those changeover points where you are opening and closing, which are the same points where the bending and stretching change over, and the lengthening out and in changes over, and the twisting in and out changes over. All the same place. So stand up and try a little bit of movement 2. Okay, relax. What I felt was there's quite a bit of inconsistency in the changeover point from closing to opening, or bending and extending out. It certainly wasn't happening at the same place consistently. Where should that be?
From
Yeah.
closing to open, I mean, should be after the wrist connect roughly at the Dantian level.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And roughly is a good word because everybody's dantian's a little different, but it should not be halfway up the body.
Mm.
Right.
Mhm.
The connection is when after the arms have gone out, you're bending all the way until your arms cross at the dantian.
Mm.
And the changeover point is at the dantian in this case. As I said, there can be slight variations, but not huge ones. And then the opening completes when you reach the extent of your etheric body, if you're feeling that out here. And then the bending, the closing in, starts right away. I saw that extension held as the arms were going down, and then about halfway down, you started closing.
Mm.
I'm not saying this is true of everybody, I'm just pointing out the point. So, and indeed, exactly where this is out here, there's a range here where you actually feel it, where you arrive at it. But all these things coordinate together. So we're not only trying to coordinate the elbow and the knee opening and closing, but we're trying also to coordinate all the rest of the movement too. So that, to me, that kind of was important to not only be aware of the opening and closing, but the coordination with everything else, because they all contribute to helping each other.
Right.
So, any other questions about this? Well,
Oh,
see if you can open and close your elbows and knees all the way through God's and coordinate everything else.
Right.
Nothing to it.
mhm.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Have a good week.
Do everybody.
Also,
So, of course, that's all happening in the form too.
Mm. Mhm.
Right.
I will say at this moment that you two are a little more consistent than the other guys, which points to the amount of practice and that you have put in over the years.
Well, yes, the longevity to, yeah, right. Yeah.
Yep. Um, So, any questions on the form? So,
Okay.
let's just do the first paragraph. We'll make it easy on you at the moment. But really beginning to try to feel that coordinated opening and closing of elbows and knees.
Mhm.
David, I don't have much space, but I'll do the best I can here. Okay?
Oh,
Just
that's,
saying.
that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I might say as you do this, one of the things you might be aware of is where our elbows and knees working together in opposite ways.
Hmm.
Right. Interesting.
Begin Taiji. So what did you notice in that?
I could, I mean, I could feel when they were working together. I think I'm more challenged to think about when they're not, or to observe when they're not.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Mm.
Yeah, there's so much going on.
Well, that's it. Yeah, you just kind of, what am I thinking about right this moment, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. How do I observe all sorts of things?
yeah. So if you want to examine that, you really have to sort of do it posture by posture.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
Take the time to examine, and so you might not do all of it at once
Mhm.
ever, but looking at it a little bit is informative.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I felt working on the elbow and knee connection while moving through the postures really brought a lot of good attention to the knees and feeling the difference between the front and the back of the knee, especially whenever you were balancing on one leg as you transition through the postures.
Mhm.
You can really quickly feel when you've let your weight slide too far and your weight shifted from your foot into the front of the knee.
Yep.
And I mean, you can just feel that the hose just kink right off, and it's like boom. So that was really good, but I couldn't focus on a difference between the elbows and the knees. I think it was just kind of too much to focus on.
Yeah,
Especially very deliberately focusing on opening and closing the elbows and the knees. It was
Yeah.
it was
yeah, it was less of a flow, more of kind of driving the bus on that one.
yeah,
At least for right now.
yeah. No, I think I was asking too much of you there.
But kind of going through it, I think intellectually I could see places where there would be differences.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yep. And thinking about this in relation to last week's exercise,
Mm,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yep.
I think that probably should have said this in the other part of the class. Um, I think that's an important connection. Probably easier to do that in God's than it is in the form, but that after all, this connection between elbow and knees is working on making that same movement of the energy from the feet up to not only to the diaphragm but to the spine.
mm-hmm.
So kind of an important connection, and of course this relates to the other external correspondences as well: ankles and knees, quad and shoulders. So, but elbows and knees are right in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just need to get everything to work together. A coordination of all the things that are going on, either in God's or in the form. I mean, that's really a lot of what's important in terms of opening up the movement of the energy. So,
Right. I was thinking about how to compare the two in terms of like what we just did in God's in terms of movement too, right? And trying to really get that energy flowing as you're doing that, and then thinking, well, the best way for the form is to understand that coordination is to just take posture by posture.
Yep.
And kind of that may mean stopping, that may mean not doing a flow in that same way. But then when you started talking about last week, it's like, yeah, but that's what we have to do. We have to break it down to put it back together. I mean, how many times you have said that, obviously. But that's, yeah, just a good reminder for me that, yeah, you have to do that in order, because both Adam and I just talked about how hard it was to keep track of everything, you know, well, what do? You have to kind of go, oh yeah, okay, this again, kind of like get this, yeah, make this observation, get this back into our body, and then, yeah, add.
And you know, that goes back also to Stephen's point about where does the problem originate?
Right.
Where is the mother of the problem?
Yeah.
And it may be before you start to move.
Right. Well, I also found, you know, I have these foam pads under my feet and they were uneven, and that threw me off.
Oh,
Because
wow.
I was moving wider than I was in God. So it's not an issue in God's.
Uh-huh.
But as soon as I began to step out, I was stepping off, and I was like, oh, the whole, you know. Yeah. And then just really feeling that as like, oh, yeah. So I'll pay attention to that better next week. But
You know, that point, my immediate thought about that is that that's also in a way like practicing outside,
yes, exactly.
where it's not all
Not even.
smooth and even, which is the reality of what we're working with, is that really everything isn't always smooth and even. The situations in our life are not always smooth and even. We have to learn how to keep the energy flowing even when it's not.
Right. Right. I remember back to some of the very early kinds of practices we were doing, and just like really feeling things with our feet.
Yep.
Yeah. And doing, yeah. And then we had more classes outside for a while. Yeah. And I've done Tai Chi outside a bunch too. So it is, you're right.
Yeah. So, well, have fun.
Well, something to think about, something to do this week.
Right.
Hopefully, the more during class I can smell that smoke. I mean, I think I can, you know, it's just it's very heavy today. So I have the windows open. I don't, yeah. Ugh.
It's nice.
The Canadian tires.
Yeah, but
That's
the
that kind
weather
of breathing.
is so much better out there today in terms of temperature and humidity.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
That's an improvement, at least.
That's an improvement. Right. Yeah. Challenging times.
Challenging times, yes.
Certainly.
Weather.
Thanks,
All right.
Alex.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Good to
David.
see you both.
Good seeing you.
Good to
We will see you all next week.
Yep. Hope your worlds go smoothly this week.
Thank you. You too.
Okay.
All right. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.